I'm Lex Kassel, and we are going to be reading Matthew chapters 24, 25, and 26. As Jesus came out of the temple and was going away, his disciples came to point out to him a building of the temple, and then asked him, "You see all these, do you not? Truly I tell you, not one stone will be left here another, all will be thrown down." When he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us when this will be, and what will be the sign of your coming, and the end of an age?" Jesus answered them, "Beware that no one leads you astray, for many will come saying, 'I am the Messiah,' and they will lead many astray. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All this is the beginning of the birth pangs. Then they will hand you over to be tortured, and will put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of my name. Then many will fall away, and they will betray one another and hate one another. And many of these false prophets will arise and lead many astray. And because of the increase of lawlessness, the love of many will grow cold. But the ones who endure the end will be saved. And this, the good news of the kingdom, will be proclaimed throughout the world, a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So when you see the desolating sacred standing in the holy place, as it was spoken of by the prophet Daniel, then those in Judah must flee to the mountains. The ones up on the housetop must not go down to take what is in the house. The ones in the field must not turn back to get a coat. Pray that your flight may not be winter or on a Sabbath, for at the time there will be great suffering, such as there has not been from the beginning of the world until now, and will never be. And if those days had not been cut short, no one would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, and those days will be cut short. Then if anyone says to you, 'Look, here is the Messiah,' or 'There he is,' do not believe him, for false messiahs and false prophets will appear and produce great signs and omens, to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. Take note, I have told you beforehand, so if they say to you, 'Look, he is in the wilderness,' do not go out. If they say, 'Look, he is in the inner rooms,' do not believe it. For as lighting comes from the east and flashes, it is far as the west, so will be coming of the Son of Man. Wherever the corpse is, the vultures will be gathering. Immediately after the suffering of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give us light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven will be shaken. Then the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and all the tribes on the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man is coming on the clouds of heaven with great power and great glory. Then he will send out his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds and one end of heaven to another. From the fig tree learn its lesson. Soon as the branches become tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also when you see these things, you know that he is near, at the very gates. Truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all of these things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But about that day and hour no one knows, neither the angels of heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. For as days of Noah were, they will be coming of the Son of Man. For as those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying, giving in marriage until the day Noah entered the ark. And then they knew nothing of the flood until it came and swept them all away. So too will be the coming of the Son of Man. There will be two in the field, one will be taken away, and one will be left. Two women will be grinding meal together, one will be taken away, and one will be left. Keep away therefore, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore you must also be ready. The Son of Man is coming at an unexpected hour. Who is the faithful and the wise slave, whom the master has put in charge of his household to give the other slaves their allowance of food at the proper time? Blessed is the slave whom his master will find at work when he arrives. Truly I tell you, he will put that one in charge of all his possessions. But if the wicked slave says to himself, 'My master is delayed,' and begins to beat his fellow slaves and eat and drink with the drunkards, the master of that slave will come on a day he does not expect him, and at an hour he does not know. He will cut him to pieces and put him with the hypocrites, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Matthew 25. The kingdom of heaven will be like this. 10 bridesmaids took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were wise. When the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom was delayed, all of them became drowsy and slept. But at midnight there was a shout, "Look, here comes the bridegroom. Come out and meet him." Then all those bridesmaids got up, trimmed their lamps. The foolish said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out." But the wise replied, "No, there will not be enough for you and us. You had better go to the dealers and buy some yourself." And while they went to buy it, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went with him to the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later the other bridesmaids came also, saying, "Lord, Lord, open to us." But he replied, "Truly I tell you, I do not know you. Keep awake therefore, you know neither the day nor the hour. For it is as the man going on a journey summoned his slave and entrusted his property to him. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, each according to his ability. Then he went away. The one who had received 5 talents went off and traded with them, and made 5 more talents. In the same way, the one who had 2 talents made 2 more talents. But the one who had 1 received 1 talent, went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those slaves came in and settled the accounts with them. Then he said to the one who had received 5 talents, and came forward bringing 5 more talents, saying, "Master, you have handed me 5 talents. See, I have made 5 more talents." His master said to him, "Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter the joy of your master." And the one with 2 talents came forward, saying, "Master, you have handed me 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more talents." His master said to him, "Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things, and I will put you in charge of more things, to enter joy of your master." Then the one who received 1 talent came forth, saying, "Master, I knew you were a harsh man, reaping where you do not sow, gathering where you do not scatter seed. So I was afraid. I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours." But his master replied, "You wicked and lazy slave, you knew, didn't you, that I reap where I did not sow, gather what I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and on my return I would have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give to the one who has 10 talents. For all those who have more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But for those who have nothing, even with what they have will be taken away. As for this worthless slave, throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and the angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate people one from another, as his shepherd separates the sheep from his goats. And he will put the sheep in his right hand and the goats at his left. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, "Come, you are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you in the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when we saw you hungry, and we gave you food, or thirsty, and gave you something to drink? And when was the time we saw you as a stranger, and welcomed you? And when was the time we saw you naked, and gave you clothing? And when was it when we saw you sick or in prison and visited you?" And the king will answer them, "Truly I tell you, just as you did one of the least who are members of your family, you did to me." Then he will say to those at his left hand, "You that are cursed, depart from me into eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me, naked, and you did not give me clothing, sick and in prison, and you did not visit me." Then they will also answer, "Lord, when was it we saw you hungry, or thirsty, or a stranger, naked, or sick in prison, and did not take care of you?" Then he will answer them, Truly I tell you, just as you did not do one of these for the least, you did not do it to me. And then they will go away into eternal punishment, but the right to eternal life." When Jesus had finished saying all these things, he said to his disciples, "You know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified." The chief priests and the elders of the people gathered in the place of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and they conspired to arrest Jesus by stealth and kill him. But they said, "Not during the festival, or there may be a riot among the people." Now while Jesus was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very costly ointment, and she poured it on his head as he sat at the table. But when the disciples saw it, they were angry. "Why this waste? For the ointment could have been sold for a large sum, and the money given to the poor." But Jesus was aware of this and said to them, "Why do you trouble the woman? She has performed a good service to me. For you always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. By pouring this ointment on my body, she has prepared me for burial. Truly I tell you, wherever this good news is proclaimed in the world, what she has done will be told in remembrance of her." Then one of the 12, who was called Jesus Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me if I betray him to you?" They paid him 30 pieces of silver, and from that moment he began to look for an opportunity to betray him. On the day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus, saying, "Where do you want us to make preparations for you to eat the Passover?" He said, "Go into the city, a certain man, and say to him, 'My teacher says the time is near. I will keep the Passover at your house with the disciples.'" So the disciples did as Jesus had directed them and prepared the Passover meal. When it was evening, he took his place with the 12, and while they were eating, he said, "Truly I tell you, one of them will betray me." And they became greatly distressed and began to say to each other, one after another, "Surely not I, Lord." He answered, "The one who has dipped his hand into the bowl will betray me. The Son of Man, as it is written of him, but woe to that by one whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for him to not be born." Judas, who betrayed him, said, "Surely not I, Rabbi." He said, "You have said so." While they were eating, Jesus took a loaf of bread, and after blessing it, he broke it and gave it to the disciples and said, "Eat, this is my body." Then he took a cup. After giving thanks, he said to them, "Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will never drink again from the fruit of the vine until the day that I drink it new with you in Father's kingdom." When they had sung the hymn, they went to Mount Olives. Then Jesus said to them, "You will all become deserters of me this night, for it is written, 'I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered.' But after I am raised up, I will go ahead of you to Galilee." Peter said to him, "Though all becomes deserts because of you, I will never desert you." Jesus said to him, "Truly I tell you, this very night, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter said to him, "Even if I must die with you, I will not deny you." And so said all the disciples. Jesus went to them a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee and began to be grieved and agitated. Then he said to them, "I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and stay awake with me." And was going a little further, he threw himself to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not what I want, but what you want." And then he came to his disciples and found them sleeping, and said to him, "So you could not stay awake with me for 1 hour? Stay awake and pray that you may not come to the trial with the spirit that is indeed willing, but the flesh is weak." Then he went away for the 2nd time and prayed, "My Father, if this cannot pass until I drink it, your will be done." And then he came and found them sleeping again, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them, he went away and prayed for the 3rd time, saying the same words. Then he came to the disciples and said, "Are you sleeping and taking your rest? See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get on, and let us be going. See, my traitor is at hand." While he was speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived, with him a very large sword with clubs, and from the chief of priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer has given them a sign, saying, "The one I will kiss is the man, arrest him." Then once he came up to Jesus and said, "Greeting, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you are here to do." And they came and laid his hands on Jesus and arrested him. Suddenly one of those with Jesus put his hand on his sword, drew it, struck the slave of the priest, cutting off his ear. Then Jesus said to him, "Put your sword back into its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will not send me more than 12 legions of angels? But then how would the scriptures be filled, which say that it must happen this way?" At that hour Jesus said to the crowds, "Have you come out with swords and a club to arrest me as if I were a bandit? Day after day I sat in your temple teaching, and you did not arrest me. But all this has taken place so that the scriptures and the prophets may be fulfilled." Then all the disciples deserted him and fled. Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas the high priest, in whose house the scribes and elders had gathered. But Peter was following him at a distance as far as the courtyard of the high priest, and going inside, he sat with the guards in order to see how this would end. Now the chief priests and the whole councils were looking at the false testimony against Jesus, so that they might put him to death. But they found none, although many false witnesses came forward. At the last 2 came forward, and he said, "This is my fellow. I am able to destroy the temple of God and build it in 3 days." The high priest stood up and said, "Have you no answer? What is it that they testify you?" And Jesus was silent. The high priest said to him, "I put you under oath before the living God to tell us if you are the Messiah, Son of God." Jesus said to him, "You have said so, but I tell you, from now on you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming from the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, "He has blasphemed. Why do we need a witness? You have heard this blasphemy. What is your verdict?" They answered, "He deserves death." Then they spat in his face and struck him, and some slapped him, saying, "Prophesy to us, you Messiah. Who was that struck you?" Now Peter was sitting outside the courtyard. A servant girl came up to him and said, "You were with Jesus of Galilee." But he denied it, saying before all of them, "I do not know what you are talking about." When he went out to the porch, another servant girl saw him and said to the bystanders, "This man was with the Jesus of Nazareth." And he denied it with an oath, "I do not know this man." After a while, another bystander came up to him and said to Peter, "Certainly you are one, for your accent betrays you." Then he began to curse, and he swore an oath, "I do not know the man." But at that moment the cock crowed. Then Peter remembered what Jesus had said, "Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times." And Peter went out and wept